Do 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 ka-choo, electric boogaloo. Round two. I already did round one as just pure audio because I was like, oh, I'm so excited to analyze this fight. I just want to record it, and then was really stupid and didn't actually record any video with it, so I'm gonna have to go back and redo the video. But this time we're gonna try actually using something magical called streaming software to record what the fuck is happening on the screen. So that you can actually follow along with what I'm saying and it will make sense. So Boo 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 Kachu Electric Boogaloo round two of Loma Lopez, one of the greatest fights of all time, like we talked about in the first round analysis that you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, which is why I'm mentioning it again. Um, People think there's like literally nothing going on in the front half of this fight, and this is one of my favorite fights to analyze because we're going to take nothing and we're going to turn it into a whole lot of stuff because there's very much a lot going on, and we're going to pick this shit apart to the umpteenth billionth degree to show all the cool stuff that's going on for anybody who wants to get into film study or anybody who just likes this fight or likes either of these fighters, so that you guys can look at this and take some principles of film study and use it to look at other fights and learn all sorts of different things. These are just my raw, unfiltered impressions, all one take because we're raw here. We do fuck it, we do it live, and we're gonna see what we see. We're gonna see what I think about this fight first, like first impressions. Well, not first impressions because I watched this fight like 5 different times, but first impressions like analysis, just doing it live, I guess. Most important moment, the referee tells him they can box, clearly. All right, so you see Lopez again just coming in with his classic step, just starting off with probe. Again, that shotgun jab. Interestingly enough, you can kind of see when they meet dead square in the center of the ring, which is kind of funny. Their foot distance, again, thank you Top Rank for actually showing us the feed. Shout out to the people who are real fans of boxing. We watch the feed. At least when Top Rank shows them to us for the first like 20 seconds before they take it away. But anyway, what I was going to say is they're actually a little bit closer than before, and you can kind of see that, right? So again, Loma is making progress. He's getting in, like we talked about in the beginning, right? Like Lopez has a. At first, I was like, does Lopez have reach advantage? And then go back to the tail of the tape at the beginning of this fight. He has a 3.5, 3 inch reach advantage. Yeah, 68.5 to 65.5. Yeah, 3 inch reach advantage. So definitely has a bit of a reach advantage here. So Loma's job this whole fight, win condition, is to get in, to get past that long reach. So again, you see Lopez again just coming in, doing this technique we kind of talked about in the first bit. This little like hand raise that he uses here. You can see his hand comes up as his back foot moves. Boom, right there. He does this a lot to disguise the way that he steps, which is kind of funny. And one of the things actually that I didn't talk about in the beginning, but I think is even more funny, is that he almost starts doing this after Loma does it, which is really interesting. And it's kind of this weird thing of like, how do I put this? Like, I forget who it was that I remember someone saying this. Like, sometimes when your opponent does something, it means that they're also aware of like this thing. Like when Loma raises his hand a lot, it means that like he's also looking to see if his opponent does that, right? And it's almost like teofimo was like taking that and thinking, oh, you like to raise your hand a lot. I'm gonna do that, not because I really think that I'm going to do anything with this, other than just that it's gonna make you think I'm doing something, right? And so then he does that to disguise his foot movement because he's like, oh, you think this is important, so I'm just gonna do it just so that I can hide my foot movement, basically. So he's like stealing the way to hide his foot movement from what his opponent is doing, which is crazy. Again, teofimo, very, very, very fucking sharp, especially at this point in his career. Wicked, wicked smart. To be young. God, I make it sound like I'm old. I'm not. This kid's maybe like, actually, I don't know how much younger than these. I don't want to date myself. But, right, so you see this classic, puts his hand up to hide his foot movement, come forward, and again, like we see over and over and over and over and over again in the beginning of the fight, as soon as that fucking foot comes down, boom, the jab comes out, right? As soon, take an inch, give him an inch, he will take a fucking mile, because this kid is hungry and he wants Loma's blood. So again, we see Loma holding his ground a little bit more now, which is nice. Again, I'm a huge Loma fanboy. Hate me if you want, I don't care. I love this man. We'll talk a lot about why I think he's awesome and why I think both of these fighters are incredible as we get through this fight. So Loma, not just backing up like he kind of has a lot in the beginning, standing his ground, right? So he disengages and then he re-engages, right after this jab. He takes a step back, small step back with the left foot, big step back with the right foot, pops, and immediately resets, right? Because again, he sees like nothing else is coming, right? And I'm almost wondering if this was actually one of the instructions that he got in his corner, because this is like early in the round and his reaction is so different than it was before, to not just like back up immediately and a ton, to say don't no shit, to say don't just fucking run when he comes at you. You have to like stand your ground a little bit, right? And so you can see him, you know, planting his feet, raising that foot for his classic, or raising his right hand for that classic probe that he likes to do. Again, like we talked about in the beginning, he's trying to get Lopez to associate him raising his right hand with him coming into range so that Lopez starts to punch at him off this timing. But Lopez, ever not the fish, has not been on this once, almost like the entire fight, because Lopez is actually timing Loma on the timings when Loma's vulnerable, not when Loma just wants Lopez to punch at him. So again, you see him raising his hand when he comes up. Also, like I said, this serves defensive responsibility, blocking this jab coming in. If a jab should come from Lopez here, Loma has his hand up to block in case, right? So it also serves that. He's taking this little small step back here again because he sees Teofimo coming forward, and Teofimo, ever the aggressor, as soon as Loma backs up, boom, this foot comes up, comes forward. Big step, right? And interestingly, I said before, Tay usually likes to fight in a bladed stance, but ironically here, he's really not, actually. He's very much like opening his center line, which is kind of funny. Again, you see him do this thing he usually does. Again, as soon as that hand comes up, back foot moves, right? So there's a useful takeaway as well, like things to watch for, to see how fighters hide their foot movement, right? So that it's not so obvious. So let's see. And again, we see Loma circling to the left, or circling to his left, right? Like circling to his opponent's inside. Let's see here. And again, Teofimo very even in his weight, which is part of, I think, why Loma's staying in range, because he's not expecting Lopez to lunge at him just yet. Lopez, interestingly, trying to get outside, but Loma's kind of like giving it to him by circling inside, and he like doesn't really care. He almost, I think, wants Lopez to go outside of him because he knows that once he does, Lopez is kind of going to be like committed or like stuck there, and Loma can just circle in and then take like space back and circle back to the center of the ring, and it won't really matter as much if Lopez gets outside foot position on him, because he knows his feet are fast enough to get away before Lopez can really do anything when Lopez makes these like long lunging steps. Because even though Lopez does have really fast feet in the long range, he's like fast in one direction. He knows that he's not going to be able to like lunge over here and then like teleport over here, instant transmission, and hit him. Right, so you see, again, as soon as Lopez sees Loma backing up, again, step back, big step forward. Again, Loma, now that he's like in range, this is something I didn't talk about before, right? Now that Loma is like more more in range, because he's still really not in range, like we talked about before. Loma's ideal range is basically like fucking stepping on Teofimo's foot, pretty much, or basically where their toes are fucking touching. And they're not touching yet. I mean touching, like his toe is touching, literally touching Teofimo's foot. Like he's stepping on his foot, basically. Or starting to step on his foot. That's how close Loma basically has to be in order to hit Lopez. So he's not in range yet, but he's a lot closer than he was before. Like if you go back to the first round, their feet were like here, like this S to like the fucking corner of this thing was like how far apart their feet were, or from like just under here, like the G of the MG of the MGM to here. They were like much farther apart. Again, because Loma's really just trying to see like, okay, where do I need to stand so you can't hit me? And now that he's in this range, sorry, this like all the stuff again. Oh, nothing is happening. It's like no. It took Lopez is doing a great job, but it takes this long when you're fighting an opponent this good to overcome the reach disadvantage. And the difficult thing I think that people don't realize is like you have to take risks to probe, and you can't just overcome the reach gap all at once, right? Like these are like limited resources that he has access to. Like, oh, every time I try to push my way in, Lopez is going to push me out. So once I've mastered like the outermost range and how to get into like middle or like a couple more inches forward, then I can start probing to see, okay, now what does Lopez do in those like middle inches of the reach disadvantage range, right? Where he still can't hit Lopez, but Lopez can hit him. But now Lopez only is like 1.5 inches of reach advantage now instead of 3, instead of like the full reach advantage, right? Um, so like Loma is closer to his range basically, but he has to get through those first like 1.5 inches before and figuring out what Lopez likes to do at the maximum edge of his reach before he can figure out, okay, now what does Lopez like to do when I'm a little closer to him, right? But you have to get through those first 1.5 inches every time. So he can only start getting information from the 1.5 inch in layer once he gets past the first 3 inch, the max 3 inch layer, right? Which is what he's kind of starting to do now, or at least in this moment. I don't know if it happens in this round yet. We'll see, but he does get inside eventually, right? So now he's taking advantage to probe and say, okay, now Lopez, what are you going to do? Now that I'm a little bit more inside on you than I was before, now what are you going to do? Right? So now once he's at this distance here, now he's starting to take advantage of, okay, probe outside. What do you do? Not really a whole, again, teofimo, not really giving him a whole lot. Again, filtering out the white noise. And again, taking advantage of, again, this kid's eyes are fucking insane. Literally, his foot is picked up and moving, and as soon as his foot picks up, he throws a punch out, right? And again, because Vasily has extremely good feet, is able to almost... I actually wonder if his foot comes down faster here. Or if he just... Yeah, like almost a little bit faster, slash just like his feet are just that fast. But if teofimo was fighting someone like him or someone else who takes bigger steps, that absolutely probably would have hit. But because Loma takes really small steps, or has been taking really small steps, which again is a theme we'll talk about a lot in this fight, that Loma takes a lot of smaller steps, and I think that's one of the adjustments that teofimo makes, is that he starts making smaller, quicker steps. Teofimo starts taking smaller, quicker steps to keep up with Loma, which again we'll see Loma overcome anyway and make his own adjustment to that. But that's just something to like think about as we're watching the fighter's feet going forward. So again, Loma kind of putting out this probe, and this kind of ties back to something from the first round too, where he, again, once he started to get into this middle, like 3 to 1.5 reach disadvantage range, right, but like past the first 3 inches, where he started trying to like get Lopez to jab and then slip or like pull counter a little bit. And that's him kind of like replaying this and testing it to be like, okay, is this, like repeating it to himself by doing it to remind himself that he has this, or that's like one of the things he's trying to do, right? So this is him just kind of like thinking out loud almost. I like to think of it. Trying to see like, okay, how do the pieces fit together? How do I get through? How do I solve the puzzle that is Teofimo Lopez? Basically, the jigsaw puzzle that is Teofimo Lopez. So we see, again, him kind of like repeating this almost like jab motion here as he backs up to think about like, okay, what's the timing I need to do here? And again, we see him immediately now do something that he does at the end of last round, which is that he saw started to work well, which is this little stutter step and pop. And it's interesting too because this timing is actually a little faster than what he does at the very end of the round, at the end of round 1, where he does this little like stutter step pop. Actually, I almost want to go back and see if I can find it because it was really, really good. Let's see if we can find it. Not that. This right here. Boom. Ooh. This little pop, drop, step, explode. This is one of the things that I kind of talked about in my first round study, which is that Loma started to realize that when he dips, Lopez does not always actually react to his drop, which is something that Lopez is going to start to do, I think, in this round and the rounds going forward. And then there's going to be even more layers, right? It gets even the plot thickens. It gets even deeper. Inception. That we'll see these layers kind of as they go forward, but this is just easier to understand right now. So we're talking about the first layers of stuff that we go through, right? So he started to realize, oh, Teo doesn't always react when I dip. So when I dip now, and again, right, this is what I was talking about. See how close their feet are? And the the hilarious thing, Loma ever the good sport, is not literally stepping on his foot like he absolutely could do, and if he wanted to do, he could do, and then he would absolutely hit Lopez. But you're not supposed to do that because it's against the rules. So Loma's like, I'm not going to break the rules to hit you yet. I think he probably does step on his foot again at some point. Again, it's boxing. Can't really crucify people for that, but it is against the rules. You're not supposed to do it. Um, can't crucify people if it happens every so often. There are some people who routinely step on people's feet, which is dirty. You shouldn't do that. Um, but like I was talking about before, right? Like CFR part, their feet were before compared to now. This is where Loma wants to be, right? His foot literally fucking touching Teofimo's, and he literally has to pick his foot up to step around his foot so he doesn't step on it. That's how close Loma has to be to actually punch. And you can see here, he almost gets him, but Teofimo, because he has fucking insane reflexes, Neofimo, solving the Matrix, lol, is dodging the bullets. So again, right, we'll see coming forward this little stutter step that he does here in the beginning of round two is, let's see if we can find it again. That right there is the exact thing that he was testing at the end of last round and a little bit in the beginning of, and a little bit in like the middle of round one to test to try to get forward. And you can almost see, in fact, I actually kind of want to go back and look and see exactly where this is, where we have 457, to see like, I think he speeds it up. Yeah, he does. Oh, maybe it just looks slower because I'm pausing it. But let's see. Let's watch it in real time. Yeah, he does. So look at that, right? That little like half beat pause, and then he punches, compared to, and of course Lopez dodges, right? And so again, Loma making this small little adjustment speeds it up. He actually does it faster this time. If you watch real close when he does the star step, boom. See how it comes out immediately? He doesn't wait. Like he did the first time, because maybe he's thinking, oh, you got out of the way the first time because I was too slow. Well, guess what? Now I'm not going to wait as long. Right? So again, this is one of the things that you want to do when you're studying tape, which is one of the reasons why the first round is is both the easiest and sort of like simplest to study because you haven't seen anything yet, neither of any of the fighters. Because everything that happens after this is based on all the stuff that happened before, which is why the first round's easier because there's no like pretext, right? There's no preamble, nothing else has happened yet. But this is one of the things you want to watch for, right? Is if you pay enough attention, you'll get to see these little details, almost like you're reading a book, really, that people pay off if the writing is good or if the fight is interesting and the fighters are good. You'll see these things like pay off. You'll see them make these adjustments. Pause for drink of water. So you'll see these sort of things going forward, and it gets gets infinitely more complex the farther into the fight you go because even more stuff has happened, right? And sometimes you'll see really funny stuff like shit that happened in like fucking round 3 come back in round 9 that like has literally not happened at all for the rest of the fight, but all of a sudden comes up, right? Which is one of the reasons why studying early fights or early rounds is a little bit easier or simpler in that regard because there's less stuff going on. So again, we'll see, right? Again, Loma testing out the deep level change now. That was one of the things we saw him start to test out at the beginning of the first round a bit was those level changes. And we see Teo again using that, raising his hand. Interestingly, actually, to catch the jab a bit here, which is probably why he does it again. That one wasn't the one I was talking about. It's that one here, right? He does this. This is one of the things he does in the first round that he starts to continue to do because he finds that it works. Which is to say, Loma doesn't do anything when he does it, which to him it means it works because he's looking to attack people, right? We talk about fighters being aware of the stuff that they do so that other people don't do it to them, right? He Teofimo likes to attack people based on their feet and their timing when they step, right? A lot. That's one of the things you'll see him do over and over and over in this fight. So again, he's doing this to hide his front foot movement, and he's also throwing his hand out there. To almost like, I actually don't entirely know. This is like a weird half probe, half like really meant to catch the jab when it comes in, right? And he like changes it halfway to just kind of like pin this hand in place right? As he moves his front foot and his back foot, he's got like two different motions here, right? He's got like him picking his hand up, which right, so that little fist bump they did right there, him shielding the jab, and now Loma probing. Again, good work by Loma. All shit he should have done in the first fucking round of this fight. He usually doesn't. He didn't. You can tell I'm frustrated because I'm a fanboy. That Loma does in the first round, or sorry, is now doing in the second round. He doesn't normally do that. Is forcing Teofimo to make adjustments. Now he's forcing Teofimo to do things. Teofimo's like, oh shit, I have to do something because if I don't, I can't let this fucking pretty boy walk all over me. He is bringing his hands up and doing this in this little catch pin motion because now Loma has just punched him, right? Like 3 different times in the first 10 seconds of this round. He's been much more active compared to the first round where he did almost nothing. And he's having to do things now, which is good for Loma. This is what Loma wants. Like we said a little bit in the first recording, like he's trying to get a rise out of Teofimo. He's trying to get a reaction out of him because he has to get one of the easier things for him to do, at least, is he has to get Teofimo to move, or I should say, he doesn't have to, but that's one of the easiest ways or the best ways for him to get in is if he can control what Teofimo does and get him to move in the way that if Loma can get Teofimo to move in the way that Loma wants, Loma is much easier for Loma to get in once he can predict what Teofimo is going to do, right? If you like, I think Freddie Roach is the one who's attributed this quote to. A lot easier to counter when you know what punch is coming. If you know that Teofimo likes to jab every time when he's in a specific situation, if you can recreate that situation and then get in, that's what Loma wants to do, right? So him doing this gives him more information, right? Or more things to work off of. So this is good for Loma at least. And again, Loma not just immediately running away, standing his ground a little bit more. Again, they're a little bit closer than they were before. And damn, I love this. Fucking Teofimo like just fucking sticks his shit out like this. Like, oh yeah, what are you gonna do about it? and Loba is like, I'm gonna stand my ground for the most part, and I'm gonna slip. And he takes a big step. I actually looks like he's gonna punch here, but he doesn't. And again, Teofimo, right, giving proper respect to his opponent, like seeing like, okay, now what are you gonna do when I take this big step forward? Oh, and here's actually a really cool adjustment, right? So in the first round, you saw Teofimo take these big fucking like lumbering steps. I don't want to call him lumbering, but like he's actually extremely intelligent about where he positions his feet. Like very, very, very smart about where and when he moves because he doesn't make a lot of moves usually, but he does position himself very well. Shakur Stevenson does this, which I believe very almost firmly that he learned that from Terence Crawford because Terence Crawford's fucking like god tier about where he moves his feet, how he moves, and when he chooses to move, and picking his spots unbelievably well. One of the things I talked a bit about before was the idea that Loma is going to make more moves to Teofimo's moves. He's going to move his feet more, generally. One of the adjustments Lopez is going to make to try to counteract that is moving his feet faster. And right here is where you see him actually start to do that. So normally, he would take these kind of... Let's see if we can go back to the very beginning of the round to see him do it. He's actually almost already moving his feet a little bit faster in this round. But usually he takes these like really big, or been taking these really big long steps, but now he's actually taking like shorter steps, right? He's like tightening up his footwork a little bit, which again, he can do. Like, he's not like, that's why I don't want to say lumbering. He's very smart and he's very quick and very precise about where he puts his feet. And he has the athleticism and the speed to do it. He's not slow, right? But normally what we've been seeing him do is almost this, except even bigger steps. Like before he'd be putting his foot like fucking out here. But he kind of has to, again, because tighten up his steps a little bit because they are closer. They aren't as far away. But now we see him, tightening his feet up a little bit. And again, this kind of like big step right here, that's like more characteristic of the first round. But again, we see now this little boop, boop. And this is just a probe. Again, because he's kind of respecting the fact that he's close to Loma now, right? And he kind of feels immediately already, again, this guy's reads Lopez's reads are so good that Loma is standing his ground a little bit more. He's like, oh, are you going to punch back? Well, let's see. So he does this little probe, right? To see what he's going to do. And Loma just backs up. And then Lopez is like, okay, well, I'm going to take a decent step forward and then be a little bit more aggressive immediately, right? So again, now instead of just stepping, now he's stepping and putting a punch behind it, right? And this is one of the things that people don't talk about all the time, but you'll see a lot in professional fights is the like appropriate calculated risk taking that happens. That a lot of times with professionals, because you're not amateurs anymore, and you're not fighting with headgear, and you can get really hurt. You want to always measure out and calculate your risk and do things that are as safe as possible and mitigate. We're like mitigating risk basically, or minimizing the risks, right? Which is why, like, you'll see it happen in stages. So first it's stepping, then it's stepping with a probe, then it's stepping with one punch, then it's stepping with two punches, right? So there's these levels of progressions that you go through in professional fights oftentimes, or at least like very careful fighters will do that. So some people just come out and just start fucking winging at each other, but usually the that's the kind of idea in professional fighting, is that people tend to want to minimize their risk, which is why you see him just do a probe here and then immediately take again tighter steps, right? Probe and then jab, and again Loma bringing his hand up. And I kind of wonder, does he raise his hand like normally? This is him. Yeah, this is him just reading Teofimo, basically, or timing Teofimo's movements forward, and again just kind of moving back and staying out of range. I want to talk about this slip outside, because this is kind of an interesting and a weird slip for him to do, right? Because he's, again, look at where their feet are, right? He's so far out of range. He can't clue. He's not going to hit Teofimo from here. He's not going to get past Teofimo from here. So what is he doing, right? He's probing. He's just probing. He's really just looking to see, okay, what do you do when I do this? And you will see Teofimo pick up on this. Actually, it's either this round or next round. He starts to counter this, and he starts to punish this, because he realizes that Loma's not going to do anything, or hasn't been doing anything off of this, which is the way you beat a probe, is you attack it, right? If someone's coming forward and they're just probing, they're just getting information, they're not really giving you a serious threat, you hit them. That's the way that you beat a probe, is you attack it, which Teofimo is going to do over and over and over again in this fight, right? Because he has the reach advantage, and he's going to take advantage of it. So he's stepping forward just to probe here, and we see Loma again trying to time when Lopez is coming forward. The other interesting thing too that Loma does here is he does the classic, right? His right hand comes up and then he slips outside, which is him again almost trying to. You see him right trying to like he just is again right here that we talked about before, where he steps back and throws this counter shot over the top, this like imaginary counter shot over the top, even though he's out of range. Is he's just kind of like repeating stuff out loud, thinking out loud to himself, like, okay, how does the timing of what I want to do fit into the timing of what you're gonna do, right? Like when you step forward, right? He's like timing it right again based on like when Lopez's foot moves later. Like Lopez's foot comes back down and he slips outside. But the other thing about this too, right, is he does the classic, puts his right hand right up like he's been doing this whole time, up and then slips outside, right? So again, he's trying to, again, just kind of reiterating our point from the first video, he's trying to get Lopez to punch at him when he does that motion, when he brings his right hand up. And it's not quite working yet. But he does at least get a jab-ish out of Teofimo sort of there. Or at least times it correctly of when Teofimo's coming forward. Although I think that actually was probably more from, I can't quite see their feet here. I think he was timing this more based on, yeah, almost based on like when one was like back foot was like coming back down. This is partly when Teofimo was trying to do that. And also just based on, let's see. Yeah, now Teofimo, again, doing something very interesting here that he hasn't really done before. Partly, again, because they're in closer range than they were before, right? Is if you notice, it's his front foot now that he's jabbing. Before, what he would do is he would take these big, long steps forward with his front foot. His back foot would come up a lot or a little, and then like as soon as his back foot landed or took his back foot, as soon as his back foot took a little step and he tightened up his stance, then he'd explode forward and punch. But he's not doing that. Now he's like tightened up his stance. His stance is not as wide, narrowed his stance. And now he's punching with his front foot after his front foot steps, which is very, very smart to do, so to speak, right? So let's see, actually, if we can time this. Right, so front foot steps, back foot comes up, front foot steps. Actually, I shouldn't say that. He's like it is still like a weird timing, but he is kind of stepping as his front foot comes out, less so after his like back foot comes up. So kind of similar, but again, he's kind of punching from a still a different look, still punching from like a different width of stance. Right, his stance is much narrower now. Look at how close his feet are together, actually. Um, than they were in the beginning. And this is one of the first times we see him do actually this sweeping left hook fake probe that he does, which is really funny because this clearly doesn't just work for free, right? Like Luke Campbell did this and got fucking eviscerated. So there's probably something else that Lopez is. I don't know what it is. I'm with you, the audience here. I don't know what it is that he's doing, but I want to figure it out. Or I want to try to figure out what it is. You know, what is it that Lopez is doing that makes this work? Whereas Luke Campbell got fucking like beat to death when he tried to do that to Loma because it wasn't working for Luke Campbell. Mm-hmm. Why does this sweeping probe work? But this is noteworthy, right? Because this is the first time that he does this. He doesn't do this at all. He doesn't do the sweeping probe at all in the first round. This is like a fake left hook kind of motion. And again, I think this is because, or I suspect, that this is sort of Teofimo feel it right now. It's him feeling it out. Later, we'll see him do it again, just as a probe or as a mix-up, so he doesn't become predictable for Lomachenko. I suspect Lopez is starting to do this to control these slips outside from Loma, which is what he does not want Loma to do. He doesn't want him to just do that whenever he wants. He wants to control him and control space, right? Although the interesting thing here is, I wonder if he just like sixth senses this shit, because Loma actually had not really started to slip here. Oh no, he kind of does actually. I wonder, maybe it is a little bit. Maybe he is just kind of feeling it out. I think that is what it is. I suspect. I'm guessing here that that's kind of what it is because Loma just did it before that, and then he's kind of just like looking at his timing. Again, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning of round one, where Loma does this fake like disengage, re-engage thing, where he'll like step with his front foot, then take a big step back with his left foot, then come back in a little bit, right, and then look like he's taking this big step out, but then not really step with his front foot that far, and he'll actually he'll step like really far, almost out of range, and then his front with his back foot, and then his front foot will like come close to his back foot, and then come back out, and then he'll all of a sudden be in range again if you're not paying attention, and then he'll like jump all over you, and he does that to people a lot. And against his lesser opposition, that worked really well. Not so much against Teofimo, because Teofimo is very on the ball with that shit, and will not let you just get away with that. Teofimo's like fucking. I swear, I wonder if Teofimo blinked in this fight at all. I mean, clearly he does, but like, goddamn it, almost looks like he fucking doesn't blink at all in this fight. Dude's eyes must have been so dry afterwards. So, right, we see Loma do this slip, and then he's again trying to. Right, this is sort of a new timing, right? That Teofimo is also probing him on, right? Like again, he slips. There we go. Slips outside as his foot's moving, right? Because he knows he likes to do this from the first round, is when he steps. And then as this foot's moving is when this probe comes, right? So Teofimo, again, lining up the timing very fucking well. Stepping in between his opponent's steps. There's another really cool takeaway for you guys. Of like moving in between your opponent's steps. Timing it so that your feet are moving when your opponents, so that like your feet are coming down, or that basically so you're attacking when your opponent's feet are like in midair, basically, which is really fucking hard to do. But if you can do it, it is really good, because now Lomachenko can't do anything, right? He can't really punch from here very much because his foot's in the air, which is why he immediately puts his foot back down, because he's like, oh shit. But you know, again, Teofimo, this battle that you're going to see for the whole fight of like timing versus timing, Teofimo's timing, well, it should be like a podcast name, Teofimo's timing, versus like Lomachenko's speed, is something you're going to see over and over and over again. So again, you see Teofimo trying to jab, and Loma timing it, and this is his. So actually, this is the rhythm I was talking about before I got sidetracked. That he does this little like bob to the outside almost. It's a quick front foot step, big back foot step, small front foot step. And then he comes back in, right? And that's what Teofimo's timing, right there. And again, that's a pattern. If you watch the first round, you'll see that a lot, except more exaggerated. So actually, this is probably a better example of what I'm talking about right here. Where he takes this like small step in, big step back with his left foot. Except he doesn't actually back that far away. Again, Loma doing a much better job this round of actually standing his ground. And that's part of why, Teofimo was taking these shorter, tighter steps and probing, which Loma gives him kind of like a half little slip outside, comes back to the middle. And this is funny because this is kind of dangerous, but like is, what was I going to say? Oops, didn't mean to unpause there. Because they're very close together. But again, right, Loma is, look how close their feet are now. Much, much closer. This is where Loma wants to start to be. So again, the sweeping arm motion, the jab, right? And again, Loma like being defensively responsible, but also like look at his legs too. This is something that's kind of interesting here, right? Like both guys are set and can punch, but Loma specifically, and this is kind of funny here, like is very high in his stance, which makes me think he's going to drop his weight here. We'll see. We'll see if he likes to slip down a little bit. Maybe I said that because my subconscious remembered that he does that, but I swear I wasn't thinking that. Right, he is trying to time like this probe from Teofimo so he can slip under it. And again, look at where his foot was or is, right? How close his foot gets, which is what he wants right there. And again, this is kind of funny because this is Loma sort of fucking doing back to Teofimo what Teofimo did in the first round, where Teofimo would like dip and take these big steps forward to probe. And this is him just kind of testing, right? Again, this is what we were talking about before. But again, Lomachenko is usually much, much more aggressive with his probes in how he tests his opponent, right? So just doing steps from this range or slips or probing with his hands or something to get information. And again, you see Teofimo kind of like almost stop halfway his probe that he had here. That he was like, he does left hook, jab. He was about to do a left hook, and then he's like, oh shit. And he brings his hand back in and dips. Right? And again, you see this right hand kind of close to his body. He drops his weight a little bit. Not quite giving away, but hinting at something that we saw before. You can see he's kind of like sitting down on. Again, this is what part of why you can tell he's like a back foot fighter, right? Like his reaction as soon as he does this is to settle down, drop his weight, and put his weight on this back foot. You can see how tensed his back foot is too, and he's got some weight on his front foot too. Again, it was a lot more apparent in the first round. It was very apparent that that's what his reaction was going to be. Is that he was going to drop and lean over his back foot to load up the right uppercut, which you're going to see a lot later in this fight. So again, there's this like, oh shit, and he brings his hand back and he's like, all right, what are you going to do? And then when Loma takes a step back, his answer is, I'm going to punch at you. Or probe, at least. And again, tighten up, take this short step. You can see him relaxing a little bit here, standing up. And Loma, again, probing. And Lopez, again, never the fish, this boy. Does not give him shit. Literally no reaction at all to what he's doing. And just settles in. Right. So you can see he just kind of relaxed, sets into like, okay, what are you going to do? Nothing. All right. And as soon as that foot comes back, jab. And again, this is kind of like a soft jab. But, and again, this is one of the few times where now their feet are like much farther apart. But they can't really quite see it because this dude's head's in the way. So again, Teofimo kind of gets control of the space back again and pushes Loma out of this 3 to 1.5 deficit range, where Loma is now more than 3 inches outside of the range where they can both hit each other. And now he's pretty far away, which is where Lopez wants him. Lopez wants to keep Loma on the end of Lopez's jab so that he can hit Loma, and Loma can't do anything, right? Hit and don't get hit is the name of the game. And now, right, we see him do this thing that he wants to do a lot. And if Loma was able to keep doing this for the rest of the round, this would probably be really effective. But unfortunately, it's just not what he, I think, ends up doing. So we see, again, a small pop jab to push Loma out of range. And then again, let's see how he times this. Right as Loma's backing up. And then as he's, again, trying to time, something Lopez does in the first round, or has been trying to do unsuccessfully, is to time Loma as Loma is coming forward So Loma is literally stepping into the punch, right? But Loma's timing is a little bit too good for that. And he's a little bit too aware to get caught like that. But it's still pretty effective of a tactic for Lopez to do, and it almost works here very well. So again, right, as soon as Loma backs up, Lopez coming forward again. You can tell from how fast this happens and how often this happens, and how this happens a lot in the first round too, that they were probably drilling this in the back like before they even came out, and then also were drilling this shit over and over and over in the fight camp, in the camp leading up to the fight, in the gym. And you can tell because of how automatic and how fast and how clean and how rehearsed that motion looks, that he was taught as soon as you fucking see this dude back up, lead ball over him. I'm trying to do my best teofimo senior impression here. Right, but as soon as he backs up, throws that jab, controls that lead hand, and Loma's like, again, I love these fucking poses these guys get into in this fight. Loma's like fucking feet firmly planted in midair. And again, right, Teofimo showing off his athleticism is really long, big step. Where the dude can punch from. In the first round, you saw him do this and throw like 3 punches afterwards because the dude's ridiculous that his stance can fucking be like this and still do shit afterwards. Like that's like what I mean at least when I talk about athleticism, right? Like Loma cannot do that. Loma cannot be throwing punches at you from fucking stances like this that are this hard, and then by the way, still immediately get his feet back together and be clean, like in position, right? He's ready, even though he doesn't really quite look it. Like he could react from here. And so again, just like we saw in the very, very beginning, first like interaction of the fight, where Teofimo takes this really big, long lunging step, right? He's trying to push Loma away, right, and just keep him at range, keep him away from him, so that Loma has to work to get back inside. Now Lopez, interestingly enough, almost gets like a little too close for where he should be here, but he's just trying to really cut off the ring. But Loma wants to be wants like this closeness. Right. And again, you see Teofimo trying to time Loma as soon as Loma steps on the line with this jab here, right? This is kind of a pattern we also saw in the first round a bit of them. Teofimo trying to cut off the ring. After Teofimo pushes Loma away, how do they get back to the line of scrimmage, the line of engagement, or the position where they're going to fight, basically? And we talked a bit about how what Teofimo's trying to do here is he's trying to both like read where Loma's going to end up and also then try to position himself in a way where he can kind of pick or force where the engagement is going to be in the ring. That's kind of why having center ring is sort of considered to be an advantage, because you have more control over that than your opponent does, generally speaking. Of course, Loma used to being on the outside is able to mitigate that a lot, but again, that's why we talk about like having ring generalship and holding center ring as being an advantage. And that's why ring generalship is one of the scoring criteria, even though really like the top level people only really care about clean, effective punching for the most part at the higher end of boxing judging. But so again, right, we want to pay attention to whenever you're like looking at any engagement, right? Is like, when are the fighters stepping into position to where they can hit each other, right? And then who gets there first? So right now, nobody's totally set. Teofimo's got one foot. Loma's bringing his other foot, and so is Loma's bringing his front foot. Teo's bringing his back foot. And you see Loma, ironically, actually I think it's because they actually might be a little farther away than it looks, because it's kind of hard for me to tell here. Yeah, actually, if you look at these feet here, you can see how far apart they are. That's why Loma's... At first I was like, why the fuck would Loma step there when he's so close to him? He's not. He's actually a little bit farther away. It's just kind of hard to tell from the camera angle. But that's why, Loma is trying to step in this like circular sort of motion here. They can circle back to center ring, go towards the open space to try to get inside of Lopez, to try to undo what Lopez is doing, to try to stop Lopez from cutting off the ring. Although you can see, as soon as he takes those, he realizes, right, like Lopez is starting to try to cut off the ring, and that's why, he plants that foot real quick there. Excuse me. And he's correct, because as soon as he fucking does that, Lopez punches at him. We're pros, right? And again, both of these guys, right, like are anticipating the other person's moves, are thinking, you know, again, we talk about chess and thinking like three, four, whatever steps ahead. Like this is both of them thinking three, four steps ahead. And then, you know, being ready and being in position to slip when, by anticipating, oh shit, Teofimo's about to get into position. I need to get into position. He gets into position. As soon as Teofimo gets into position, he throws a jab or a probe, and Loma is ready and slips outside, right? So again, right, like gauging people's readiness, what people are paying attention to and what they're not, will let you figure out, you know, kind of what the fighters are thinking at any one given part, what their tactics are. And now, right, you see, this is where they want to be. This is where Loma wants to be. His foot literally fucking like stepping on Teofimo's foot is where Loma wants to be, because that means that he's in range basically to punch, which is what he wants. And again, like I said before, you know, Teofimo getting almost a little too close for his own good here, getting his maturity showing itself, or his youth showing itself a little bit. Does he actually hit him there? No, he shields. And again, that little forearm shield from Teofimo is going to come up a lot in this fight. A lot in this fight, especially later on. But again, right, like Loma standing his ground a lot more than he was before, not just backing up, coming forward and probing. This is one of the things before that I was going to say. Like in the first round, he doesn't really do it all that he should be doing, and this is him doing it a lot more, right? Like not just backing up, coming forward, probing, slipping, contesting the space. And again, it's kind of Teofimo's mistake here because he's giving up the reach advantage. He's getting willingly stepping closer to Lomachenko than he needs to, which is a mistake. He shouldn't be trying to do that. Because that's not what he not what he really wants. But Lomachenko absolutely taking advantage of it as well. Again, now, right, like Lomachenko, right, again, reacting immediately to what just happened. Pressure comes forward, he slips. Pressure comes, he brings his own pressure, Teofimo contests. Now he brings pressure, looks like he's going to bring pressure forward. Again, you can tell he always, I love how he does this. It's so funny. But every time he comes up with this really high, big, loose stance like this, you know what's coming. The drop. And that's what he wants. He wants this slip down, Teofimo punching over his head. And he's like, ooh, that's good. I like that. I'm surprised he actually doesn't come forward again there and punch him. But again, he's kind of just, oh, jeez, that was close. Maybe he kind of felt the aggression. Who knows coming. Right. Slip. Maybe I think he just kind of realized he was in like a little bit bad of a foot position here. So he steps back. And again, as soon as he's almost kind of learning now, right? Like as soon as I step back, this motherfucker's going to punch me. So almost he steps back and then, right, again, like, this is actually something else that he's trying to do too, which I think is interesting. So this isn't almost necessarily him, I think, just stepping out of a position that felt weird or uncomfortable for him. Although I do think that's kind of that because he realizes, fuck, his right hand is right in line with my face, and that is not what I want. Which is why he takes a quick step back here. But he's also testing now, like, inside the 1.5 to 0 reach disadvantage range, right? So like 1.5 to 0 inches out of his range to punch what Teofimo does. Because that's about where he is now, like 1.5 to 0 inches of reach disadvantage. And he's thinking, okay, so now when I'm in this range, now what do you do, right? Which is why he does this like slip outside. Because I think this was actually going to be like a slip outside to try to see what Teofimo does. And he almost gets punched right in the face. So he puts his foot down and manages to slip and back up. And I think you can kind of tell Teofimo, I don't think Teofimo hits him there, because if he did, you would probably see Teofimo fucking jump all over him, which is why you can kind of tell that this like misses a little bit. Or I should say, at least doesn't quite fully seem to land. But does succeed in doing what Teofimo wants, which is pushing Loma away. Now look how fucking far apart their feet are again, which is exactly what Lopez wants, right? Keep him on the end of my jab this whole fight. And again, Lopez is getting a little too aggressive, stepping in more than he needs to, right? Getting a little too close. Loma, again, right, after the beginning of the first round where he kind of figured out, okay, where do I need to stand? Where's the end of Lopez's reach was what he kind of found in the first round. And now you can see, right, like, let's see, you can kind of see it after here, right? Their feet are really far apart. This is like the end of Lopez's reach, right? About here, sort of, like theoretically speaking. He can lunge farther than this, but this is like the edge of where he can comfortably stay in position and repeatedly like fire punches at Loma from. is this distance right here, about. Right? This is where Loma can stand, and then pretty much no matter what Teofimo does, Loma can get out of the way and not get hit here, right? Which is what he found in the first round. But now he's more comfortable. Both fighters are more comfortable, so they're getting closer. This distance, much, much closer, like fucking half the distance before that we were talking about, right? Which just means there's more you have to pay attention to. There's things that are like more things your opponent can do you have to watch for. And again, Loma testing this slip outside. And I think ironically, almost enough, I would argue, I'd be surprised this doesn't start to happen soon, where Teofimo starts to counter this because Loma is doing this but hasn't been able to make any real headway with it yet. But he is getting, like, by real headway, I mean, like, he hasn't been able to score. But he is getting closer, right? Look how close their feet are now, which is what he wants. But the interesting thing, too, here is, Teofimo's ready, right? And again, showing off what Teofimo's going to do later, dipping and putting his weight down on that back foot, or getting ready to almost go over that back foot, right? So he can counterpunch. And again, this sort of movement here, kind of what I was talking about before, where Teofimo will bring his back foot forward and then put his front foot out and then have his weight over his back foot, is how Teofimo likes to move, and then like rock forward a little bit. And again, this is interesting because he does this little high guard flip again, right there, and not do anything with it, and then like rocks forward back and then takes a step. And interestingly, Loma, again, right, like being intelligent, contesting the space, not just fucking standing there like a limp fish. Loma is actually contesting this space and reading what Teofimo wants to do. So again, you can see Loma's kind of picked up on that kind of rhythm of Teofimo. Even though he hasn't seen it in this round, he saw it a lot in the first round. And so when he takes this big step forward, he throws a jab out and probes. And again, you can see their feet almost stepping on top of each other. And this is one of the things, and yet, despite this, right, which is why like there's more than reach to this too, it's also kind of about like you have to pay attention to like people's like body dynamics and their torso and how long their legs are and how wide their stance is. And this is one of the reasons why you'll see Teofimo have this stance that's really wide a lot, because this gives him extra breathing room, right? Like see how fucking far his foot is, and even more than just his body being over his torso and his head being over the back foot, right? The fact that his stance is really wide gives him an extra bit of space, right? Like if his foot was just right here, Loma could step right up to right here and be this much closer to his head. But he can't because Lopez's foot is in the way. He's controlling the space by stepping, right? Again, Lopez is very smart with where he puts his feet. And so, so you can see he takes this step, right? And by just stepping, it's like controlling the space. And so Loma can't really hit him. And so even though like Loma is where he wants to be, sort of like foot-wise, that their feet are basically fucking touching, he can't hit him because his head is too fucking far away because his stance is so wide, right? And this, you'll see this is sort of like one of the deeper layers of Teofimo's defense, which again is sort of the proof that like Loma is figuring things out, right? Like it's not true to say that nothing is happening. He's peeling back the onion. Ogres and Teofimo are like onions; they have layers. Any good fighter has layers to their game, right? Right. So you can see, right, his foot is literally fucking touching him. Look how far away this punch is. Miles away, like in boxing terms, fucking miles away. And Teofimo loading up that back foot counter, which we'll see later on. And so like this is what Teofimo wants because this gives him an extra buffer, and this will sort of be the last layer of defense one of the last layers of defense Teofimo will have before Loma is literally just fucking walking all over him later at the end of this fight. So then they step out, they disengage, because Loma sees that Teofimo is ready. And again, Loma feels like he's peeling back the layers, but he's like, don't want to take too many risks at once, right? Can't be too aggressive. So they disengage, Teofimo throws up the jab to control, and man, Loma again stepping back in with high guard, hand up, just to see kind of what he does, if he's going to punch at him. He doesn't really. Now Teofimo, again, right, like mirroring his opponent. Just sometimes I swear Teofimo just like fucking mirrors his opponent just to fuck with them. Like, oh, you like to dip at me? Well, I'm gonna dip at you and see how you like it. Kind of though, right? Oh man, it's really funny. But yeah, right, like this big, stupid, giant ass fucking level change, which Loma gets Loma to back up. To be fair, because even though it seems kind of stupid, this is what Teofimo would do before when he would like fucking lunge these spearing right hands, which is why Loma is backing up. But again, right, like Loma doing a better job than he was in the first round of getting closer, right, testing, probing, again, showing the slip outside, but not really. Part of the difficulty with this is one of the reasons why, right, like Loma's really not necessarily in control yet, is that he's not really getting Teofimo to do anything off of this yet. He's not really getting a reaction out of Teofimo. Now he's coming back to center, and there is something here which is cool that you'll start to see, which is this pattern of he slips outside, he comes back to center, and then Teofimo starts to control him when he comes back to middle, which is why he's going to combine this, I think, with a slip down instead of coming back to neutral here. And again, like, you know, we talk about footwork and range. This isn't a mistake from Loma. This is intentional, 100%, right? One of the rules of boxing is like, you are dumb as fuck if you move like this, keywords, when your opponent is in range to hit you. And that's why Loma's a master at this, right? He's positioned himself so he's out of Teofimo's range. Just at the just the tip. I know what I said. But he's doing this to try to get Lopez to punch at him, right? So that now when he slips outside and comes back to middle, he will not make this mistake of air quotes, of coming back straight fucking up like this, where he can be easily hit, right? He's gonna slip outside and then look like he's gonna come do this and then drop down or slip left or slip back to the right or something, to avoid this control, right? But this is what he's trying to program Lopez to do. Whenever I slip out and then when I return from that position, I want you to punch at me so I can attack you off of that timing, right? So again, this is Loma trying to program Lopez and actually sort of getting for the like first time in this fight, almost this entire fucking fight, actually getting Lopez to do something, sort of, even if it's just really like kind of a probe and not like an actual like punch, right? And oh, sorry, it's just my back. And you see both guys doing the deep level change back and forth at each other now to just fuck with each other. He's like, Loma like hilariously send the message of like, you wanted to do this to me, but I'm the OG, so I'm actually gonna do this to you. And Tiffany will be like, oh shit. And again, you can tell, right? Reactions are telling. And again, you can see Loma, you can't see because this is blurry as fuck, but Loma's eyes are wide open. You can see his eyebrow up here. This is a telling reaction for Tiffany because he's feeling the pressure now, right? And that he kind of shells up, goes over his back foot. You can't really quite see because you can't see where his feet are, but it looks almost like you can kind of tell, right? Look at where his foot probably air quotes is now because you can't really fucking see it. Compared to his head, he feels this. His stance is much narrower. He doesn't have that buffer that he had before, which is why he's like, oh shit. And he turtles up and you'll start to see the foreshadowing of what he's going to do later, where he's probably going to punch off his back foot with a right hook or right hand or right uppercut from this stance. Right. So again, this is for all of you people who like to watch film study, right? Like again, you can kind of see what your opponent or what the opponent is going to do from how they react to these probes. And this is one of the ways you can look to see what people are thinking, right? Even when they're not punching, even when they're not like, quote unquote, doing anything, that they are doing stuff. They're saying things or they're giving stuff away. Pause for a drink of water. So again, Loma. Now this is funny too because Loma does not do this in his much later fights. He does not do these probes this many times before he starts to go in, which ironically enough I think is actually one of the mistakes that he makes in his fight with Devin Haney. But which we'll get to if we ever get to a Devin Haney analysis, but where he dips because what Loma would do a lot in his early fights, or even earlier, basically until this fight with Teofimo where he lost, is he would not start as fast, and he would probe over and over and over again. So he would know, like with absolute certainty, oh, here's all the different ways that you like to react to when I do this one thing, this slip outside, this big step in, head slot change, the drop straight down. And then he'll come up with like the one or two things that counter all of the things that you did, that you showed him. And then that's why at the end of the round, then he would have these little flurries where he basically shows off, like, well, here's what I learned in the last 2.5 minutes from you, right? That I learned that you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and that's going to beat all four of those options. And I can do that confidently because I've probed you 4, 5, 6, however many fucking times, and seen all these different reactions, and now I know, oh, you're probably not going to do anything other than that. So it's safe for me to do this. Right. And he doesn't, ironically, he doesn't do that in his fight with Devin Haney. I think that kind of bites him because Devin Haney just kind of reacts to what Loma does because Loma's rushing and catches him a couple of times, coming in too quickly. Loma not doing that right now, taking his time, right? Arguably taking too much time. But taking these big, deep probing steps. And again, interestingly enough here, Teofimo kind of attacking Loma when he comes forward. Teofimo giving him a different look here, bringing the right hand up again, almost giving himself away now with how often he does this. He brings the right hand up, and then as soon as he does that, he punches again to just kind of tie that hand up to probe, and then or tie that hand up or to pin that hand to Loma's head so Loma can't do anything, right? Boop. And basically like occupy the punching lane, and then try to leap in and either, like, you can see there's a couple different things he was thinking here. Maybe left hook, maybe I pull this front hand down and throw a right hand behind it, maybe I leap and throw a jab to the body, and he kind of stops because he doesn't like the look. Lopez does because he's like, I don't like this look, I don't want to go all the way in. So again, we see them disengage, come back to the line. You see this slip outside, and let's see. Does 50-50, flip your coin. Does take a shot. does Lopez jab? Does Loma duck? Let's find out. Oh, sort of. Loma again, right? Testing the layer. Loma coming back to neutral, fake come back to like this neutral, easy to hit position, and then dipping, right? And again, his left hand pinned to his cheek where it should be. Lopez kind of like faking the probe here, or like almost throwing like a pseudo probe. Just giving him something to think about. And now this, I think, right here is actually where we start to see Lopez start to counter this movement by Lomachenko, because Lomachenko hasn't taken advantage of it yet, because he's almost, I wouldn't say taking too long, but like Lopez has, because he's not really taking too long, but Lopez has seen it too many times to not react to it at this point, to not come up with a counter. All right, so we see him slip outside, come back inside, slip back outside again. Lopez jabs over top, and boom, fucking clocks him with a right hand as he comes back, and really smacks Loma with his right hand. Again, really good shot by Lopez and really good timing. Bang! Whew! And Loma's like looking at him, but is like, okay, that hurt a little bit. And then again, right, you see when Lopez lands, he likes to come right in and hit you again. And he comes right in with his two-piece chicken tender to the body. Boom, boom. Although I don't know if that one actually hits. That might have hit his elbow more than his body. But Lopez very much taking control of the round right there with that punch. Again, nice little left hook. Bouncing off the guard. Again, that right hand when he slips outside, trying to catch him, just trying to see if he can do it. And you'll see this kind of weird, almost like rule-breaking stance where he like turns and punches like really far, almost like past Lopez, punches like past his own left shoulder in terms of how far his right hand is moving to get to Loma. And he hits so fucking hard that he's still able to like shove Loma off balance here. And Loma like has to take 10 steps just to fucking catch himself. And is like, what the fuck was that? Again, right? Like, this kid's athleticism is unreal. But Lopez has been waiting this whole time, basically, to unleash this counter, right? This is one of the reasons why, like, you know, why in professional fighting you will see, and why I say it's correct to probe this many times before you do anything, or at least I don't know, I think it is. Because you can probe this many times, right? This is like the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth time that Loma's done this. And that's when Lopez decides to counter. Partly because Lopez's timing is just that good, but also because you don't know. Sometimes they have like 6, 7, 8 different reactions to what you're going to do. But you also have to be careful not to be predictable, which is what Loma was in this case, and that's why Lopez was able to counter him. Again, Loma maybe clearly, I think, underestimating Lopez a bit here. Getting too used to coming back high, and should have maybe dipped, like slipped out and then dipped back to like this head slot, and then like come back or some such, but not just come back straight up like that, which is what Lopez is punishing. Appropriately punishing there too. And now Lopez, like, very much in control, feeling the pressure. Loma, not really spooked, but like, just Lopez feels like he has control and is like pouring on the gas, pouring on the pressure. You can tell now they're farther apart than they were, much farther apart than they were before. And Loma, not liking that this kid thinks he can fucking walk all over him. Again, right? We talk about, the one thing that beats the other three things that your opponent just did, right? So what has Teofimo done, right, to counter Loma? Basically, he's throwing like jab, body, right hand. So he's only throwing body jab after the head jab. Right hook, straight right hand. So Loma, when he comes back to neutral here, slips straight down, which dodges all three of those things, and just rips a left hand. And this is funny too, because this is where you can see the guys starting to cash in, the information that they have on each other. And Loma's like, okay, all right, good punch, my turn. Right? He's like, I know you like to jab at me when I come back to the line or when I come back to neutral. And you can tell he's been ready for that this whole time. And like I said before, usually, again, this is an example of him giving Lopez too much respect. Waits too long to do this. Because when he comes to the line, Lopez throws this like lazy jab. This is the first time in like 4 minutes of fighting that he's countered this. Or tried to. And he barely misses. And again, that's that sort of like forearm shield, stiff arm that you'll see Lopez do a bit in this fight. Look at Lopez's face; it's so grainy, so shitty resolution. But you can see like Lopez like, oh, I wasn't. Where'd that come from? And Loma's like looking at him like, mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hit you too, pal. You better be ready. So again, Loma coming back to the line. And again, Loma, I think also correctly reading right there that he's like, I need to fire back. I need to push this kid back so I can get his respect so that he doesn't just fucking walk all over me like he's trying to do. And I think it looked like, let's see, that kind of works. And again, like this little movement right here. Watch this. See how he slips? He's already making the adjustments, right? Slipping down. Middle, like down left, down middle, down right, down middle, nothing. Then he starts to tentatively come back up, and then he probes. And again, this is an example of almost Loma being too tentative. He should have punched Teofimo in the face right there because he was in range to do it, and he had it. But I think he's wary of the left hook. So again, he's just probing because he knows that Teofimo has really fast hands, clearly, as he just demonstrated, right? But you can see, Lomachenko making the adjustment in his head movement from earlier. When he didn't do that and he just dipped outside and came right back to high center and got fucking clocked by that right hook, that he's, making sure to dip, move to the right, move back to the center, back to the left, and come back up. Goes like 1, 2, 3, and then comes back up. And again, comes back up with a probe. And you can see here, I think he's not really thinking necessarily like offensively. He's thinking more defensively, like how do I need to move? Again, right? Almost like thinking out loud. Like, what do I need to do to get past what you're doing, right? How do I need to move to get past your like right hand, left hand, whatever, hook, straight right hand, whatnot. And you can tell he's not thinking offensively because he's set here and Lopez is really not doing anything. And you can see Lopez comes in but doesn't throw, which is why Loma then decides to contest the space. But again, with like a quick step, because he thinks Lopez might be about to throw, because that's what to be fair, that's what Lopez has done this entire fight. As soon as Lopez's foot fucking moves forward, he's yeeted himself at Loma, which I think is why Loma maybe kind of changes to a throw last second there instead of actually throwing a punch. So you can see the guys coming back to the line of scrimmage. Their feet are close together. Again, Loma slipping outside, making the mistake of coming back to high center again. Lopez does not capitalize this time. Again, although sometimes, I don't know, sometimes at like very high level play, you'll see people do stuff with like the it's so bad it's good move where they do stuff that like sometimes you just need to be unpredictable, right? So, and again, it's kind of hard for me to say if this purely is like a really bad move or not because I can't see how far apart their feet are because of this angle, unfortunately, which at least I can see some of the feet, but who knows? Maybe like before he was actually out of range. Who can say? Which is why Lopez doesn't do anything to punish that. And again, you see the sweeping left hand come out. Oddly, Loma like drop his hand, which is interesting. But I think it's because he's kind of trying to like drop it a little to just see what Lopez is doing. Because he hasn't seen that look a lot. And he knows Lopez isn't trying to punch him with it because he clocks the speed immediately and is like, oh, that's moving too slow to be a punch. Let me look at it and see what he's trying to do. Or what it looks like he's trying to say right now. And again, right, comes back to center, slips the jab, and again, right, like improving his defensive responsibility. I have the audio muted here, but I still yet wonder if his dad's yelling at him like, move your fucking head. Of Lomachenko Sr. saying something like that to Vasily, saying like, move your fucking head, don't just move once when you come back to center, right? Probably like right after this, I would imagine, is when he yells at him, he's like, move your fucking head, don't just fucking stand there. And so then the next time he goes slip and then comes up and darts to the right a little bit. Again, just to be defensively responsible, dodge the right hand before he moves off the line. Or dodge a potential right hand before he moves off the line. And Teofimo taking very aggressive steps, right? Wide stance, which is what he wants. As soon as his foot comes down, darts forward, right? That pattern we've seen over and over again. Loma doing his Willie Pep impression. Trying to, and again, I think Teofimo quickening his feet here is helping him too, right? Because you'll see Loma trying to do what he did before in the first round to get away from the pressure and just move his feet faster than Lopez would move his. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jesus Christ, I can't even fucking tell how many steps that was. Let's count, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's an 8th step in there. Let's say 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 steps to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 steps to 1. Oh, just to re-engage, right? So again, right, like this classic, Loma just takes more steps to Lopez's just small, very quick, small, like smart steps. And again, not necessarily taking big steps this time. This is actually almost kind of like a little bit too aggressive, but you can tell Loma, right, is ready here and takes all these steps, right, because he does actually get there before Teofimo's foot gets down. So he is on the line first, despite the fact that we make fun of him for taking 12 steps and doing his best Willie Pep impression. It worked. He got to the line first. He stayed away from the pressure, right? So he's ready to slip anything that comes. And ironically, I think Teofimo does not punch here because he knows that he did not get there first, and that wouldn't be a good idea. And again, right, because he knows he has center range. Sun Tzu Art of War, right? When you have a strong defensive position, don't attack from it. Let your opponent move first and break themselves on your walls, basically break themselves in your defensive position. So because Teofimo knows I have center ring, I don't have to do a whole lot right here. I'm just going to hold my position and let Loma move first and time him when his feet move, which is what he does right there. As soon as Loma's foot comes up, jab comes out, right? Or probe comes out to control space. And again, he kind of realizes Loma's not doing anything, picks his foot forward, but now I think he's actually kind of wrong, though, because Loma is actually moving a little bit here. And again, he slips, does this little sort of micro move outside, comes back to middle, and I think he just didn't like... He got the timing right, but I think he didn't like the look here. Yeah, that's why. So why doesn't he do anything here, right? This is actually kind of smart on his part, because he gets the timing right, but if you notice where his head goes, right? Look at where his head goes, and look where Teofimo's right hand is. Dot, 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 explosion, nuclear bomb to Lomachenko's head, is what Loma is thinking. So he's like, oh, fuck. Get out of the way. Even though he was in position and got the timing right and made a good slip, right, that he kind of realized wisely, like, oh, shit, I'm in a position where I can't really do anything, right? Right here. And again, that's because, or partly because, Loma, ironically, Lopez hasn't actually really done this yet, but he starts to later. Throw left hooks when Loma slips outside, which again is sort of an example of Loma maybe almost giving his opponent a little too much respect, where he should have, instead of slipping down here, again, Monday morning quarterbacking, but he slips straight down, and he probably should have slipped right. But wisely, I think Teofimo kind of recognizing based on how he's moving, right, that he's moving this way, or he's coming, he just slipped right, that he likes to kind of like slip right, come back middle, like reading, I guess, maybe anticipating that he wasn't going to do that. He wasn't going to double dip, go right, come back to middle, go back to right again, even though that's what he should have done, or at least that's what would have beaten what Teofimo just did, because it would have put him out of range of the right hand, and then he could have lunged in. And I think that is what you'll see him do later. What you'll see Loma do later in the fight. Again, Loma still being defensively responsible, being tentative, so that Lopez, when he just does like spearing right hands or spearing jabs, can't get to him, right? Always love this little tick that Lopez has too, where he fucking like he smacks his chunks down because they're getting in his way, I guess, or it's uncomfortable. I don't know. So they come back to the line, going for the high fives again. And they do give each other a high five. I love it. So Loma comes back to the middle, jab, slip outside. Let's see if there's a comeback. Oh, see, he does. See, again, biggest brain is Lomachenko's is like, oh, I should have slipped double right before, so I'm going to do that this time, right? So he does the high five, comes back to middle, slips right, comes back to middle, slips right again. And now you'll see him, now he's starting to try to press. And this, again, is what I was talking about before when I was saying it's so frustrating because he's not doing anything. And he comes back to these positions. Oh, with Lopez, he's just kind of standing there. Oh, sorry, I'm stretching my back. My neck. So I'm like hunched over this computer. Slaving all day over a hot computer screen for you guys. And he's slipping right, coming back to the middle, slipping right again. But you'll see that it's also, again, right, it's all in the fucking feet, dude. So his left foot comes down, right foot moves, left foot pivots. Basically, I'm getting it. His left foot sets right before he slips again. Right there. Boom. Oh my god. This is shit that he does. This is shit he does nobody else can fucking do. This little, like, pops, double step here. And then big slip outside. And his left foot moves again right there, too. So that's like, right, when we talk about StarCraft actions per minute, whatever, right, the shit that he does, nobody else does. This is so interesting, too. So this is one of the other things, actually, I don't know if anyone's actually clocked this or if I've heard anybody talk about this before. That's really cool, too, that I haven't seen him do. He, like, slips outside, not just because it does a lot of things, but it creates this little movement where he's able to, if you watch his foot, right, he slips outside and turns his weight, so he, like, pulls his left shoulder forward and shifts his feet, right, and he pivots his left foot, and then when he pivots his left foot, instead of, like, turning his heel out this way and coming forward, right, he turns his heel back, he actually uses that to step this way. Like, watch his foot, right? Bam, right there. In case you missed it, I'll go back to it again because that was actually like really, really tough timing to see. Right? He pivots forward, foot comes up off the ground, his foot comes back, and as soon as his heel touches the ground, watch his heel touch the ground, and bam, his foot comes back this way and takes a quick double step right outside. So ironically enough, he's actually figured out how to use this the slip outside to get him outside, not in the way that you'd think, right? He like pivots his foot, lets it come back, and then pop right there. Puts his foot right back down. This is one of the reasons why you'll see in like elementary boxing teaching, right? They tell you, I still always remember this from Shane. That is his name. I think his channel's like Fight Sport or something like that. I forget where he's like, when he started doing boxing, one of his coaches made fun of him and was like, your feet are sliding around so fucking much, a blind man could beat you. It's like, the point being, don't slide your feet. Pick them up, put them down. And you want to pick them up, put them down real fast, and that's what Loma does right there. Pick it up, put it down real quick. And then does it again. Takes another step here. Boom, boom. With his left, takes another step here with his left foot, boom, boom. To try to get outside. And again, him sort of testing the waters. Just trying to see, okay, like what is Teofimo going to do? And Teofimo correctly is like, oh shit. Correctly is like, oh shit, stay away from me. Don't do that. I don't like that. Was like, ooh. Even look at him, he does the even look at him, he does the ooh. His lips give that little oh when he steps back. Oh my god. Okay, anyway. The ooh, right there. Ooh, what's this? The monkey brain ooh. The unga bunga. Because he doesn't want Loma to get outside him like that. Or at least that easily, anyway. Just making sure my audio is actually being captured right now. Good God, could you imagine? We've been going at this for like 40 however many fucking minutes and this hasn't absolutely done fuck all. Oh man. Holy shit, we've been going for like an hour and a half. We're only halfway through the round. God damn. Holy shit. Fucking insane. Okay, so you see both guys come back to the middle after this sort of disengage. And again, this is noteworthy, right? Because this is one of the times where Loma, just from probing, right, has pushed Lopez off the line, pushed him back, taking control of the space for a moment, in a way that Lopez hasn't yet countered or figured out how to deal with, but he will, and you'll see it. And again, this is sort of him throwing this weird like counter fake left hook. Loma again realizing, right, all of this is like the win condition, right? Like, which we'll see is kind of funny because it's almost not a true win condition, as we'll see later on, of trying to get to the outside, trying to get that lead foot dominance, trying to get so his right foot is on the outside of Lopez's foot. And we'll see now there, right? He's probing, bringing his hand up again, they're playing this game of timing. Now you can see Loma being a little bit more aggressive because he feels like he's more in control. Again, taking a step back because Lopez taking this deep step. But again, as soon as the weight comes up, he realizes he's not lunging at me, which is why he comes back in and correctly times this probe. And again, mixes that sort of with like a deep slip level change to again push Teofimo back off the line, push space back. And they're both now mutually contesting the space here. Lopez realizing he needs to contest that space because if he doesn't, Loma's going to, again, right, we talk about layers and levels of progression. Loma's going to put his hand out there, and then eventually if he probes enough and Lopez doesn't do anything, he's going to throw a jab. And then if Lopez doesn't do anything of that, he's going to throw another punch behind it, right? So they're correctly realizing they need to test and control space here. Lopez is like, get that fucking shit out of here. Slaps his hand away. And now you see him, right, now you see Loma starting to almost take a bit more control of things with his high-low probes, right? Boom, high-low, and they're like dipping together, and Loma correctly reading it, and now coming again, right? Like because of the reach disadvantage, he has to do this. He has to do all this work just to get inside, right? High-low, high slip. Again, that left hand coming back up. It's hard to tell if he's in range because they're kind of far away. But right hand comes up and he's ready for it. And he comes outside. And that's kind of funny because he like again, right? Like Willie pepping it, coming back left, coming back right, come back left again, ready. As soon as he's back on the line, look at those fucking eyes, my god. As soon as he comes back on the line, ready in case teofimo does something, though teofimo in this case is just kind of feinting the right hand, not really doing anything. With that, that's not really his style, or hasn't been so far at least. I should say he doesn't just throw lead straight right hands, or he hasn't been doing that to Loma because he's given him respect, assuming correctly that Loma would not let him get away with that. So they come back. You see this little probe. Teofimo probes, almost like reaction, just like probes back. Again, Loma kind of realizing, right, like this is interesting because this is something that hasn't really happened yet. And I wonder if this is maybe like Lopez turning his brain off a bit, turning his brain off a little bit. That Loma is now kind of overloading Lopez's brain, right, with all this information, like so many moves at the same time. High low, high low. Now he's getting Lopez to react. Bob left, Bob right, or Bob right, Bob left. Hand up. As soon as the foot comes up again, right, Lopez is starting to attack him. And maybe that, I think, is almost what Loma is starting to figure out. So as soon as my foot starts to move, he wants to hit me. And that's kind of what he's realizing here. Maybe. That's why you can almost like see, because his feet look like they're moving really weird. Not awkwardly, just different than he normally does. And I wonder, again, right, you see those quick steps that he takes to get to the line first. Because he realizes, like, oh shit, he knows where I'm going. I gotta get my feet set. And again, like, realizes he's about to get to the position, like the position, engagement position first. So he quick pops his feet and moves back the other way because he's like, I don't want to be there because you're there first. And again, right, this is why we talk about being in the middle of the ring is sort of having control, but this is why it's sort of because Loma can just kind of pivot still and has used his feet, get on his bike, as they say. So now he gets close and they quick set. And they both look at each other like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? No, what are you going to do? And they both are like, all right, we're going to go back to the middle, I guess. Puts his hand out. Teo reacts. Puts his hand up. Slips, because he was expecting a punch, because that's what came last time. And Lopez just kind of reacts, putting his hand up. But that's also useful, right? And this is why, again, like Loma likes to probe a lot, like over and over, to get all the different reactions down, right? So that you can come up with the one thing that beats all of them. Right, so far we've seen when he comes back to middle like this, Teo likes to jab, and also now he's seen again because Lopez is really not giving him a whole lot. We've seen when he comes back to middle like this, and when I jab, he wants to jab back. When I come hand up, he comes hand up. So right now this is Loma, I think, kind of overwhelming Lopez, and you can tell because now he's kind of just mirroring him. Lopez is just mirroring Loma. And not really like putting a whole lot of thought into it. He's just kind of copying him, right? Which is what Loma wants because that makes Lopez predictable. So this is Loma kind of getting a little bit of control here. And if you remember, right, like right before he knocks out Jorge Linares, for anybody who's watched that clip, Linares made the exact same mistake that Loma like cashed in on right before he knocked him out. You can see Loma like just put his hands up for like a split second to get Linares to do it. And as soon as Linares' hands come up, he throws that monster left hook to the liver and knocks Linares out with a body shot, right? So just all that to say, this is good for Loma. This is what he wants. Again, making progress, right? Not true to say nothing is happening so far in this fight. And now Lopez kind of realizing, like, I don't like all this shit you're doing. I want to punch you again. I need to take control. Feeling he needs to take control back, right? As soon as Loma comes back to the center line, Lopez jabs. Or starts to jab at him, right? Now slip outside, hand up. Again, Loma trying to move, kind of like, again, like I talked about in the first recording, like bachata timing. For those of you speaking English, for those of you who are very interested in timing and how that relates to boxing, if you have not listened to bachata, that is a good way to kind of pick up on the example of like what I'm talking about of moving in between beats, making new timings, moving in between the established timing to break up what your opponent's doing. This is Loma trying to do that. Pause for what it. Ooh. Oh man, sorry, I've been talking for so long. My throat's getting dry. Now that the wheels are lubed appropriately, we can resume. So he comes, right, that little pop step right there that he did is what I'm talking about. Slip, back, boom, right there. That little probe. Again, in between to move his own. Again, he's like thinking out loud to test. Like, okay, now that I've kind of figured out your timing, like Lopez's timing, of when I can get him, of like thinking out loud of like, okay, repeating that last engagement that we just did, where he moved down and Lopez moved down with him, and then he moved back up and Lopez moved back up with him, and then Loma put his hand up and Lopez put his hand up. Now he's thinking out loud, like, okay, now if that happens again, what do I do to get around you? How do I move around that timing, your timing, right? And like this is him like testing it with this little pump fake step again that that he saw success with early on in the fight, or some success with. NSAC, no idea what that is. State Athletic Commission, I think, something. New Mexico, no idea. Well, I believe that's probably the initial person who inspected the gloves. Anywho, so they come back to the line, right? He puts hands up, Oh yeah, and speaking of which, this is that exact pattern we just saw before, right? The hand up, mirroring of each other, where he puts his hand up, he jabs. He puts his hand up, Teofimo probes, he puts his hand up, Teofimo puts his hand up, so he puts his hand up again, to contest, like, right, the jab after the hand up. And then takes a little pep step. Again, kind of backs up because he sees Teofimo's ready for that. Again, he's defensively responsible, he's ready. In case that jab comes, he is, and he slips outside. God, look at those fucking eyes, man. Jesus Christ. Also, look how close their feet are right now. Again, Lomachenko, smartly, making the adjustment, not just fucking coming back up right away like he did before to get clocked in the face, that right hook. Moving his head a little bit. Again, wouldn't be surprised if his dad was yelling at him, being like, Vasily, move your fucking head. Don't just come back up. And again, right, we see, I don't know if that lands. It looks like it might have, but, right, Lopez trying to time Loma when he comes back up, and Loma not quite ready for it, I think, which is why he probably does get hit there. Ooh! Sorry for your ears, everybody, but ooh! Big meaty claws. Loma kind of cashing in, and again, right, whenever you see something like this on one of these fights, which is why one of these fights is actually a little easier to analyze than some other ones, because there's not a whole lot going on. Or there's not as much going on, right, on the surface, that anytime something big like this does happen, then you can really dive into it and be like, okay, now what led to this, right? That was obviously like a big shot. Clearly something led to that. I wonder what it was. So they come back to the line. Again, Vasily kind of gets their, like, first-ish. Oh, yeah, here it is. His foot goes to come up. He jabs at him. Boom! He eats a left hook. And then he shields again, right? So this is like one of the other things that's kind of interesting to note, right? Based on people's hand position, you can tell, again, by how they're positioning their guard, what they're able to see and what they're looking for, right? So you can see he's putting his hand up, but he's also lowering it again, so you can kind of see over on his peripheral vision. He can see over his own right hand to watch for that left hook because he knows Teofimo wants to throw it, right? So that's why his hand here is in this weird kind of spot, because he knows I need to watch for that left hook. Boom. And he sees it come back, and he blocks it, and again tries to throw that left hand real quick. But luckily for Teofimo manages to get out of the way a bit. And again, I don't know if anyone's... I'm assuming, I guess, Lopez has landed punches this round, but I think, ironically enough, I'd be interested to go back to the scorecards. I think this is one of the rounds that Loma actually might have won on someone's card, on one person's card, because nobody else gave him this fucking round. Partly because of that shot right there. Because of this big bonk shot to Lopez's face. Which is probably, I think, the only thing that he does in this whole round that scores, unfortunately for him. But, again, right, Lomachenko's starting to figure out the timing. Oh, when I pick my foot up, he wants to attack me. And unfortunately, I don't think he really takes advantage of that until much later. And you can see he's actually almost, I wonder if right here he's actually trying to bait him into doing it again, right? Like Loma's trying to pick up his feet to get Lopez to punch at him again, right? Because look at how much he picks up his feet here, but doesn't really move a whole lot. I think he's small, kind of big up steps, fakes like he's almost going to pick his foot up and then puts it back down. Excuse me. And Lopez kind of just jabs at him to control space because he's not doing it. He's not like attacking, right? Obviously attacking. Loma isn't. Again, Loma maybe settling in a little bit because he feels like, oh, I just landed a big punch. That's going to put me up on the cards. Again, that amateur kind of mindset, like in amateur boxing, is a lot of point scoring. So I was thinking like, okay, don't need to press as hard right now, but he is still doing a lot, right? But he just means like, I don't need to lunge in, unlike like he does later in some of his other fights. Again, you see this kind of like half step, pump step. Again, the speed of his steps is picking up a lot, and now he's contesting. He's kind of feeling out Teofimo's rhythm, and he's contesting when coming forward. Teofimo's jab or other punches, and again keeping his hand in this position here is actually really important because this blocks, right? It lets him push the front hand jab down. His elbow's kind of in the way of that, but it also is in position to like put his elbow and his shoulder up to block a hook in case that's what comes next, right? And again, you can see his eyes very alert, obviously paying attention. Slip down. Lopez slips down too. Again, Loma kind of now figuring out the timing. Interestingly enough here, he kind of pushes him out of range, but that is something that Loma... I'm interested to see Loma try to at least start to take that away by like coming back with a step or a probe to just hopefully push Lopez out of doing that, right? So again, you see the classic slip right, come back to middle, slip left. And again, this is a good example of Loma, not being intimidated, not letting his opponent take stuff away from him, even though it was kind of a mistake, right? To slip outside and come back high like this. This is what he wants, right? This right here. So again, we see progress, right? Slip out, and again, this is sort of an interesting other thing that he does is that he slips out not just to, like we saw before, slip out to help him get outside on like the beat after that, but to reset the line of engagement now. And he moves back here, his left foot's in position where he wants to be. He can put his foot back down. When they step on a line, his left foot will come down here, and then he can slip outside. That's what he wants. But Lopez, very athletic, very fast, keeping him away, right, with this little Heisman. This little fucking Heisman stiff arm that he do to keep Loma away, which is why, again, Loma, despite moving very quickly, right, is like, shit, couldn't quite get around him that time, but he is getting closer, right? He's making progress. Whoop. And again, you can see this time, or in general, right, he's being defensively responsible for the hook, for the left and the right hook here. By dodging, coming down right here, almost like jamming this hook in where he wants to be, like right at his opponent's elbows, where almost like he wants his head to be, because he knows he can't really easily get hit there, and that's why he dips his head down there in case something comes back, and then why he moves out this way, so in case anything else comes back. And again, resets, comes back to center. And again, we see them sort of settling into this like hand raise pattern. And again, right, Loma correctly timing him now. So again, I would almost argue, I don't know, I'd have to actually go back and actually score this round. But clearly this round is very, very different, right, in terms of who's actually winning the flow of the fight. Like Loma. Loma has made so much progress this round. And I'd have to go back and actually see, because we don't really score fights that way. Or fights, at least the higher levels, are not really scored that way. They're scored more by like punching. Who's landing clean punches? Oops. But in terms of who's actually progressed their game, their plan, their level of like their game plan more, Loma has made a lot of progress this round, which is what he wants, right? And now he's starting to get ahead of Teofimo's jab and get him to react when Loma wants him to, which is why he comes here, throws his jab, boom, dips out of range, comes back in, and again you see that little forearm shiver that Teofimo does, that shield, to try to keep Loma at bay, which, as we'll see, is not going to work out very well. It will work for a little bit until Lomachenko figures out how to get around it in this fight. And he will, let's see, pro right, dip, and that's the little dip stutter step that we saw before. And again, right, this is Teofimo's mistake. You should never let Loma get this close to him, ever, because it's not in his favor. And like we talked about before, right, again, one of the other things that Loma has managed to accomplish this round, right, with all of these feints outside and these probes and these slips and everything else, is that it's kind of tightened Teofimo's stance up, right? We talked a bit before at the very beginning about how, like, Lopez is having this very wide stance in addition to this reach advantage so that he has this extra buffer, right? But because Loma has continually been, dipping to the outside, taking steps to the outside over and over in this round, right? It's forced and taking these fast steps, it's forced Lopez to move his feet faster and take smaller steps and tighten up his stance so that he can move more quickly. Because if he doesn't, Loma is literally just going to walk around him, right? Like, if you just fucking stand there, Loma is literally just going to walk around you, and then he's going to punch you in the face, which isn't good. And so by doing all that, right, so like this is me explaining, this is what's going on this round that was really important for Loma and his game plan. And it's not true to say nothing is happening in this round, right? Like, all of that stuff that he did set this moment up right here. And you'll see this a lot in Loma's fights, where in the last, like, 30 fucking seconds of a round, he pays off all the shit that he did in the last 2.5 minutes, which is really, really cool, right? Which is what this is. So again, right, like, all of the up and down stuff and getting Teofimo to react to him the way that he wants him to react, and getting him to follow him and coming back to the middle. And again, right, like, how do I put this? Similar to what Customato, there we go, says about boxing, right, and how confidence is so important. And not just in general, but in the vein of whoever's most confident in their own weapons to some extent is going to win. This is Loma not letting Teofimo take his confidence away in his weapons, right? Like, he knows, if I do this enough, if I just come back to center line enough and put my hand up enough times, I can get you to bite. And he eventually does. He does get it here. He does get Lopez to bite on this timing, right? Not with this, but here, he gets him to bite. Here, he gets him to bite and starts to work on getting around him. Then they reset. Comes up. Almost gets to bite. Here, almost gets him. Here, sort of gets something. There, he gets him to bite. Right? So now, because he's getting reactions out of him, this is what he wants. By tightening up his stance now, right, like, this is really good for Loma, because now, once he gets past this forearm, the only thing pretty much that Lopez has left that he can do is to punch or to move his feet, really. And we'll see those layers and how important they are, because there's a lot you can do, obviously, just punching. But even in that, right, Loma has peeled back most of the reach advantage at this point, or has peeled back a lot of it. We'll see, I think, Teofimo will do more in the next 2 rounds, but I believe it's either by round 4 or by round 6 that Loma really has peeled back completely the reach advantage. And now they're just essentially literally toe-to-toe. Right, and even though Teofimo does have that extra buffer of the wide stance, you'll see that Loma is now basically, right, in 2-3 rounds, not true to say nothing happened, he overcame the entire reach disadvantage against one of the best fighters, pound for pound, at lightweight, or at whatever weight they were at this one fight, lightweight. I'm like, I forget, because now a bunch of people are changing weight divisions all the time. Teofimo, of course, does not like that Loma is jumping all over him. So he comes right back, again, responds champion attitude, comes right back with lunging, jab right hand that he has not really set up at all, which is why it doesn't land at all. And Loma's like, okay, back up. Clearly I've rattled you a little bit low. So he just slips kind of outside, Teofimo kind of hungry to get his back this round. Again, hilariously, both guys dipping at the same time here. Teofimo still has not thrown that straight right hand, but I think he's just kind of slipping outside. And again, right, like for anyone who's watched Teofimo's fights before this, watch him knock out Diego Magdaleno, and that will tell you right there why Loma does nothing right here, why he just moves. Because Teofimo has that big left hook loaded up, which has knocked the fuck out of people into like the next fucking dimension. He shadow realms Diego Magdaleno with that left hook. Oh my god. Which is why Loma is not contesting, right? That's why he's intelligently, correctly, like moving away when Lopez is in this position. Why he's not just moving in, right? Because there's nothing to really be gained for him there when Lopez is in that position. So it's wise for him to just say, "I'm just going to move and reset." And again, they come back to the line. Oh, ooh, see, this is also really good. Now watch this, right? This is why Lopez needs to be contesting the space all the time with, throwing his hand out and doing that like high guard, push his hand out and pinning Loma's hand and throwing those like fake jabs or slow, like just pushing his hand out to pin Loma's hand or throwing this like looping, sweeping motion with his hand to just put something in there, right? Control and occupy the space and not be predictable when he does it. Because if you don't do that, this is what Loma's going to do to you, right? Which is one of the reasons why I love watching him fight. Is if you don't control that space, this is what he's going to do to you. He's going to pin your hand to your body like this. And again, right, look at where his head is. His head's like fucking like linked to his elbow with Loma's head's linked to Teo's elbow with like a fucking rope. Because that's where he wants to be, right? Especially when his hand is inside, when Teo's hand's inside like this. He can't punch Loma now because he's pinned this hand to his body, which is really smart, by the way. This is something that you'll see people, or one of the things that like actually I've been taught almost even in martial arts when I'm fighting from like southpaw stances that you want to do to people. Sometimes we call it checking. You check the hand and you do exactly this, almost exactly this motion, which is really fun. Really fun and really funny, except you can do this in martial arts with open hand stuff, but you can't do it in boxing because you have these big gloves on. But what they teach you to do is you grab almost either at like just below the elbow on like the forearm or the hand, and you shove it back this way and jam it into your opponent's body so that they can't do anything with it. And it like turns them into themselves, and then right this hand, he's just pinning it right here. He's not like shoving it in because he doesn't have the reach to be able to do that. But the point that I'm trying to make, right, and again, why Lifa dominance is so strong, and what I was like, taught to do to some extent in that example, is that when you check someone's hand like that and you push their hand like across their body this way, it turns this shoulder in and then turns their backhand even farther away, and now you've taken away all of their hands. All of their weapons cannot hit you, right? And you have control of their elbow. And by getting outside of them and pushing that elbow, if you grab this hand and push this elbow in, they can't now. The only line that they can attack you on is to move this elbow back in like a straight line. They can't bring it back past their torso now because you've pushed their elbow inside, in front of them, inside like over here. And they can't attack you, right? So that's kind of what Loma's trying to do, sort of, in a manner of speaking, right here. Except in this case, he's just pinning this arm. If he gets closer in, he's going to want to, again, like push this, get this elbow more to this side, get Teo's elbow more to this side, so that Teo cannot throw that left hook to counter him. And that's why he's pinning it right here, so that Teo cannot throw that left hook counter. And again, right, you see the first sort of counter by Teofimo here. Again, we've peeled back a lot of layers of Teofimo's defense now. All he can do is punch, pretty much. Or most of what he can do at this point is punch. And yet, despite the fact that it's kind of a, I don't want to say brain dead, but kind of a brain dead way to do it, there is an opportunity here, right? That I forget he might actually land there, the right uppercut, because the angle worked out well. Despite the fact that he's throwing it in this really fucking weird way, like look at where Loma is and where Teofimo is. Their feet are like this way, and Loma's almost moving at like a right angle to him, which is why this works, like why he can kind of land this shot. But he's like throwing it like across his own body. And yet, despite the fact that Teofimo is doing this in this really fucking janky, weird-ass way, he's so fucking athletic that he can throw this shot and still hit it really well and have it hit hard. And that's one of the things you'll see a lot of people do as a counter to Loma, including Devin Haney, because he stole this blueprint from Teofimo, this counter uppercut when Loma tries to go outside, right? And again, it's all about the feet. It's all about the feet and the position you're in. So look where they are, right? Here, they're kind of like center, lined up. Here, they're kind of at, literally almost at right angles to each other. Which is interesting because this allows Teofimo to do this like right hook, left hook, whatever. Again, this is Teofimo cutting the ring off really well because it allows him to do this. If they are, because Loma does not want to be, right, this is like, again, why center ring is actually an advantage and not just sort of an advantage when you cut the ring off properly. It is an advantage. Is that Loma kind of is like, again, this is an example of Teofimo kind of forcing him to where he wants him and cutting the ring off well. Right, is that normally, right, despite the fact that we talked about before, they don't want to be here in the sense that, like, Loma does not want to fight Teofimo when Teofimo has this big fucking left hook loaded up. Ignore that. Look at only the feet. Their feet are in basically almost like almost a straight line perfectly, except Teofimo has like the outside foot dominance, right? But like it forms this almost like very wide angle, like 160, 170 degrees, something like that, right? Whereas now, fast forward. Here, they are literally at a fucking 90-degree angle, right? Which is why Teofimo can put this uppercut. Because if they're at the position they were in before, right, like, shit, I didn't time it right. If they're in this position here, I mean, not only because Teofimo's forward, but if Teofimo tries to throw, like, say their feet are kind of, like, switched a little bit, Loma's a little bit over here, a little bit more over here, and is outside of Teofimo. And they're basically on this angle, like on a wide angle like this. It is a lot harder for Teofimo to throw that uppercut and land because Loma does not have to. Loma's torso, like his back part of his torso, which is where that uppercut is going, right? It's going to like the bottom left of Loma's body, like right here. That part of his body is nowhere near as close to Teofimo for that shot to land because of this positioning, right? So that's why him cutting off the ring has created the opportunity for him to land this shot, despite the fact that, again, Loma's being very smart and pinning the front hand to try to get around him, which is the play, is the smart thing to do. And again, like, you know, Teofimo is again reading that Loma is going to step here. He's going to want to step here. He's going to want to take this angle because if he doesn't do that, like watch how he intentionally steps over this other position, right? Where's the other place they could fight? Right here. That is not where Loma wants to be. He does not fucking want to be there because then Lopez can just fucking back him right into the corner and just wail on him, right? So Lopez knows pretty much, or makes a pretty good educated guess, like again 90-10, 80-20 odds, that Loma is not going to stand here to try to fight him because that's a bad idea. They both know it's a bad idea, which is why he knows Loma's going to step over here, and he knows he's going to get this like right angle kind of stance, like right angles to each other look that he wants. And again, this is why being in the center of the ring is being in control. Again, Lopez's brain is very much turned on right now. Oh, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Ooh, oh my, spicy. And so by Lopez being in the center ring is being in control, right? Like not just sort of, it is. And so Lopez, it is being in control when you know what to do with it, which Lopez does when you cut off the ring well, right? And so by timing his steps well, he can pick better than Loma can when and where the engagement is going to be. And by setting himself ahead of where Loma is going to be and getting to the line first, he forces Loma to now engage him here instead of moving past him or this way, which he can't really do now because Lopez has effectively cut off the ring, right? And Loma is almost really backed into this corner, which is why he has to move past him. Which again is why Lopez like kind of is aware of that. And again, right, this right hand, if his darts out to try to block any like left straight before, which has happened earlier in this round, right? And that's what he's trying to guard against. And as soon as that doesn't come, boom, right? He dips and throws that right uppercut to the body. So again, really good work from Lopez cutting off the ring. Again, setting that up this whole round, right? It's really hard to pin Loma because his feet are really fucking good, but Lopez's timing is so good that he's able to do it. So now we see them again, but because Loma's feet are so fucking good, and because Lopez is trying to punch here, and again, right, one of the things like one of my instructors taught me in martial arts is when you are fighting an opponent, you want to treat sometimes what you're doing to them like playing chess, and not in the way that you think, like not in like, oh, it's really strategic and it's a chess game. He's like, no, no, no. Like when a chess piece takes another chess piece on the board, it shoves that piece out of the space and sits where that piece used to be. And that's what you want to do to your opponent. You want to knock them, bump them with your body out of the space that they're in and take over where they were standing, right? And so you can see, again, right, like I talked about before, and like what we would learn about with grabbing someone's hand and pushing it to their back hip to control them so that they can't move, right? And then I'm stepping into where they are. I'm like taking over that space they were in and bumping them out of that with my body. Loma's almost doing that here, right? Because he goes so far into him that he jams Lopez up, and then Lopez like can't really step around, right? Like if you notice before in other rounds before when they've had this done this little dance that they do where Loma tries to get outside of him, right? Like we saw in the first or earlier in the second round, in the end of the first round, where Lopez, or at the very end of the first round, I think, where Lopez just like fucking whips around. Partly because he's not trying to throw a punch, he's just trying to get out of position, right? But also, like we'll see later, Lopez is athletic enough to throw this punch and move fast enough to prevent Loma from gaining any positional advantage here. But he can't do it because he's so jammed, in this case, in this specific instance, he can't actually turn that fast because he gets jammed by Loma bumping into him here. Which, again, is what Loma wants. That's what he wants to do. He wants to jam Lopez up. He wants to get in close. He wants to shove himself on top of Lopez so that Lopez can't do anything with his big, long-ass arms, and yet Loma's free to punch. That's where Loma wants to be, right? So, again, all that just explaining why all the different things that sort of like mitigate this really good punch that Lopez has, which I believe does still land, it does score, and actually does probably end up winning him the round because it's one of the solid shots he lands this round. All the different things like Lomachenko is doing to mitigate what Lopez is doing, which we will see Loma do more and more throughout this fight. And again, right, Loma immediately after taking center ring, aware that he just got hit, wants his get back, looking to re-engage, standing on the line, contesting immediately what Lopez does. Let's see what he does here. Again, teofimo throwing that kind of classic we saw in the first round. Again, Lopez kind of just throwing out the shield to try to stop Loma, which is why Loma like backs off here. But you can see, again, Loma is building. He's layering his offense now, right? He's going through the layers of the offense instead of just throwing one jab. Instead of just like throwing once. I thought there were two punches here. They're not. Oh, there is. See, and again, right? teofimo picking up on the timing now. Watch this. Just so small you could blink and you miss it, right? Loma takes this little stutter step again right before he jabs, and Teo picks up on it this time and actually almost clocks him right in the face, right? Step, jab, and like Teo's arm is already there before Loma's arm comes out, ready to kind of throw a jab, which sort of turns into a bit of a shield, which again, like I said, we'll see a lot, which is why Loma's like, oh, I don't like that, back up, reset. And we'll see Teofimo throw this sort of like shotgun pushing jab. Again, right, moving his hand up in time with his foot stepping. Throws this shotgun jab to push Loma back, right? Because he's kind of in a position, just again, has felt out the positioning very well and knows how to push Loma out of the space that he's in, right? So now again, we see Loma doing a lot of feinting, a lot of probing. Again, mixing up sort of different slips so that he's not predictable, right? Like he doesn't want him to think every time this right hand comes up that I'm going to be in the same place. Again, he's kind of like leaning back a little bit away from that left hook and back away from a potential right hand. This is the sort of like, to talk before about like how teofimo has kind of, again, tightened up his stance, is a little bit higher up. These sort of steps right here, that's how teofimo normally kind of moves, with this kind of like rocking back and forth through all these positions. But again, you can kind of see also that this is really just a really long, protracted feint to set up this right here. What he was going to do, which is to, again, try to slap that front hand down and throw a leaping right hand to the body. And again, Teofimo doing a very good job, very aggressively controlling the space in front of his opponent and stepping very smartly. And again, also showing off like you're not the only one with quick feet, dude. I can move too. And again, this just looks really goofy, really goony. But again, like the shit he can do, right? That he can take huge steps like that and then be ready to just square up with you again is crazy. Athleticism, right? And again, he absolutely just like destroys the like beating Loma to the line here. Look how fast he is, like the line, right? Like gets to the line really quickly. And Loma's still mindful of that, right? Like he's already ready to move, ready to go right here. As Loma is still kind of like getting his feet, recovering from that lunge that he took. And so he backs up a little bit here and realizes, oh, I don't want to fight you here because his foot's down already. So he's like, ah, shit, I need to move. And he moves back to the right, or to our right, to Teofimo's right, immediately. And again, wants to get his foot down here. And ironically, right, like, you know, stick and move, Willie pepping it, again, has set this up this whole round by just kind of like moving here, not really attacking it again, you know, partly because he's forced to, back against the ropes, literally. Realizes he needs to contest this space, so he does. He throws a straight right hand, boom, right there, but eats a left hook. Again, good job by Teofimo to counter. Boom. Both guys kind of eat this hook here. Again, Loma going all in for that shot, but is not really able to. But does actually kind of react in time to throw his face down so that he doesn't get and cover the uppercut. So he only gets hit with this little like left hook here. Look at his face too. He knows he hit him right there. He's so excited. He's like, "Oh, I got you. Let's go." He wants to throw now. He's like, "Oh, you want to go? Right here, right here." Look at him. He's like, "Oh yeah, you want to go? Let's go." Ooh. He's like, "Ooh, you thought I was gonna go, but I didn't." Oh yeah. Whoop. And again, right? Getting Teofimo starting to feel the pressure, letting his maturity show a little bit. Again, easily falling for this. And Loma's like, ah, see, I knew, motherfucker, I knew you were looking for that left hook this whole time. You just didn't do it until now. And he baits it out. And he gets something out of Teofimo from that, which is still useful, right? Despite the fact that it's the end of the round, they're about to finish. You know, he's still getting useful things out of him. Again, Teofimo trying to time him, and then at the end of the round, they pause. And there you go. That's round two. Holy shit, what was that? Fucking like 2 hours? 2 hours, boom, on the dot. Money. Uh, just for that.